Hey, my name is Max. I'm 24, and I want to share a story that took place about a year ago. I've always liked the idea of going off the grid for a couple of days, just to clear my head and get away from all the noise. Life had been really stressful lately, work stuff, relationship drama, all piling up at once. So I decided to take a solo camping trip into a national forest in Oregon. I won't say exactly where, but it was somewhere pretty deep in, where I knew I wouldn't run into anyone else. That was kind of the point. I got there around noon, hiked about 2 hours in, and set up camp near a small creek. It was early autumn, the air was cool, and the leaves were already starting to turn. I even checked the forecast beforehand. It said there might be a bit of rain at night, but nothing serious. Honestly, the idea of sleeping in a tent while it rains always sounded kind of peaceful to me. I brought some food, my tent, my sleeping bag, and a little notebook. No phone signal out there, obviously. Just me and the trees. I remember sitting by the fire that evening, just listening to the wind and the sound of the water. It felt good to finally be away from everything. I didn't know that in just a few hours I'd be more terrified than I've ever been in my life. It was probably around 10 p.m. when I zipped myself into the tent and laid back on my sleeping bag. I had a small LED lantern hanging above me, and I remember just watching the shadows flicker across the nylon walls. The air had gotten colder, and sure enough, the first drops of rain started tapping softly on the tent. At first, it was exactly what I'd hoped for, relaxing, kind of cozy even. I pulled the sleeping bag up to my chin, closed my eyes, and just let the sound settle in. But after maybe 30 minutes, the rain picked up. It wasn't a thunderstorm or anything, just a steady, heavier kind of downpour. And with it came this shift. It's hard to describe, but it felt like the forest itself had changed somehow. You know when you walk into a room and just feel that something's off? It was like that, but worse. Like I wasn't alone anymore. I tried to ignore it. Told myself I was just being dramatic. That being alone in the dark makes your brain do weird things. But then I heard a sound. It wasn't an animal. I know what deer or raccoons sound like. This was different. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Like someone was walking just beyond my tent. Not stomping, not running, just one step at a time, crunching on the wet leaves and twigs. I held my breath. It stopped. No footsteps, no movement. Just the rain tapping harder now, and my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. I sat up slowly and turned off my lantern. I don't even know why, but it felt like the smart thing to do. Like maybe if the light was off, I'd be harder to notice. I waited. Minutes passed. Maybe 5. Maybe 10. The footsteps didn't come back, but neither did the feeling of being alone. I kept telling myself it could have been a branch falling, or an animal shifting in the bushes. But deep down I already knew. I wasn't imagining it. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark. Maybe 20 minutes. I was still trying to convince myself it was just some animal sniffing around. Maybe a raccoon or even a coyote. But that feeling, that heavy pressure in my chest wouldn't go away. It was like my instincts already knew what my brain was trying to deny. Eventually, I forced myself to lie back down. I didn't sleep, obviously. I just stared up at the ceiling of the tent, listening to the rain, waiting for something, anything to happen. And then it did. There was a sound, this time much closer. It wasn't footsteps this time. It was breathing. I know how crazy that sounds, but I swear to you I heard it. Slow, heavy breathing. It wasn't just outside the tent. It was behind me. Right behind where I had set up my sleeping bag, at the back edge of the tent. There was no wind, no branches moving, just breathing. I froze. I didn't move a muscle. I didn't even blink. I tried to convince myself it was my own breathing echoing off something, but that made no sense. The sound wasn't in sync with mine. It was separate, distinct. Slow inhale, slow exhale. I slowly turned my head toward the back of the tent, even though there was nothing to see. I thought about unzipping the flap and shining my flashlight outside, But a bigger part of me was terrified of confirming that something, or someone, was really there. Then, it stopped. The breathing just stopped, like it had never been there. But now I was wide awake, heart racing so hard it hurt. The rain kept falling, steady and calm, like nothing had happened. But I knew something had happened, something was out there, and it knew exactly where I was. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen, just waiting. I kept telling myself not to make a sound, not to move, not to breathe too loudly. Maybe 30 minutes passed, maybe more. Eventually, I convinced myself again that it had to be my imagination, that maybe I'd drifted off and dreamt the whole thing. But then something else happened, something I know I didn't imagine. The tent shifted, not a breeze, not a branch falling. I mean, the fabric of the tent behind my head suddenly pressed in, like something touched it from the outside. It wasn't hard, more like a slow push, like someone placing their hand against it and dragging their palm downward. I jerked forward and grabbed my flashlight again. This time I turned and pointed it toward the back of the tent. Of course, I couldn't see anything through the fabric, but I kept the light there, hoping maybe to catch a shadow or some movement. Then just as I was about to call out, just say something, anything, I heard another noise. This one came from in front of the tent. It was the zipper. It didn't open, thank God, but I heard it, a faint little click, like a finger or nail brushing against the metal, like someone trying to be quiet but not careful enough. That was it. I snapped. I yelled, loud as I could, "Hey, who's out there?" Nothing, just the rain, just the silence swallowing my voice. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat there, flashlight in hand, eyes locked on that zipper, waiting for it to twitch. But it never did. When the sky finally started to lighten, I unzipped the tent and stepped outside, half expecting to see footprints or something disturbed around me. But there was nothing. The rain had mostly washed everything clean. The forest looked exactly like it did when I arrived. Quiet, peaceful, untouched. Too peaceful. I walked a few steps around the tent, heart still pounding. No signs of anyone. No broken branches. No shoe prints. Nothing. It felt like I had dreamt it all, except I knew I hadn't. I hadn't slept at all. My body was sore from staying in the same tense position for hours. I packed everything as fast as I could, constantly looking over my shoulder. The forest didn't feel welcoming anymore. It felt wrong. The entire hike back to the car, I kept hearing tiny sounds behind me. Twigs snapping, leaves rustling. I never saw anyone, but I didn't stop once, not even to drink water. Once I finally reached the lot and saw my car, I felt like I could breathe again. I got in, locked the doors, and didn't even start the engine for a minute. I just sat there, shaking. I haven't been camping alone since. I haven't even left the city limits by myself. People keep telling me I probably just freaked myself out. Maybe they're right. But I've gone over that night in my head so many times, and every time I do, I come back to one thought. Something was out there. It knew I was alone. And it wanted me to know. It knew. My name's Ethan. I'm 17, and I want to tell you about something that happened a few months ago. Something I still can't really explain, and honestly, I don't like thinking about too much. But it's stuck in my head, and maybe sharing it will help me make sense of it. So both of my parents were out of town visiting my aunt for the weekend. I didn't go because I had a ton of school stuff to finish, and honestly, I was fine staying home alone. I'd done it a couple of times before, no big deal. We live in a quiet neighborhood outside a small town, and nothing ever really happens around here. That Saturday night, it started raining hard around 9 p.m. The kind of heavy rain that makes it hard to hear anything else. I was just chilling in the living room, lights on, watching some videos on my laptop with my headphones in. Around 10, there was this loud click and everything went black. The power had gone out. It spooked me for a second, but I figured it was just the storm. It's happened before. I grabbed a flashlight from the drawer and lit a couple candles. Still, everything felt different. The house felt too quiet all of a sudden. like the kind of quiet where even the rain seemed muffled. I went to the window and peeked outside. The streetlights were out too. Everything was pitch black, except for the occasional flicker of lightning in the distance. I went back to the couch, wrapped myself in a blanket, and tried to relax. But then I heard it, the first sound that made my skin crawl, a soft, steady tap, tap, tap coming from the window. I froze for a second, trying to figure out if I was imagining it. But then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. 3 slow taps against the living room window. I didn't move. I just stared at the glass. The blinds were halfway shut, so I couldn't see anything out there, and whoever or whatever was on the other side couldn't see me either. I hoped. I stood up slowly and turned off the flashlight. I figured if I stayed quiet and kept the lights off, they'd think no one was home. I crept over to the window as quietly as I could, and I swear I could feel my heart thudding in my chest. I pushed the blinds open just a little, but there was no one there. Just the rain pouring down, bouncing off the driveway. Nothing else. I stood there for a good 30 seconds before slowly backing away. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe a tree branch had knocked against the glass, or maybe the wind blew something against the side of the house. But something about those taps, they were too clean, too intentional. I walked into the kitchen to grab some water and calm myself down. But that's when I heard it again. Not from the window this time. From the back door. Tap, tap, tap. 3 slow taps. Same rhythm. I didn't go to the back door right away. I stood frozen in the kitchen, holding my breath. The sound had definitely come from the glass door that led out to the backyard. Another set of tap, tap, tap followed, this time even slower, like whoever was out there knew I was listening. I wanted to believe it was the wind, or maybe the tree next to the fence brushing against the house. But deep down, I knew better. I turned off the hallway light and slowly moved toward the back door. There were thin curtains over the glass, and I gently pulled one of them aside to peek out. At first I didn't see anything, just the wet yard, the patio table, the trees swaying in the rain. But then, right by the edge of the fence, half covered by shadows, I saw someone standing there. It was hard to see clearly through the rain and the glass, but it looked like a man. He was wearing a hoodie, soaked through, and he wasn't moving. Just standing there, staring at the house. I ducked down instinctively, pulling the curtain closed again. My mind was racing. I hadn't seen his face, but there was no mistaking it. That figure was watching me. Or the house. Or both. I crawled over to the front of the house, grabbed my phone, and of course, no signal. The storm had knocked it out. My parents' old landline had been disconnected months ago. I couldn't call anyone. I couldn't leave. I was stuck. I tried to tell myself he was just some random person caught in the rain. Maybe he got lost. But that didn't explain the tapping, or the fact that he hadn't knocked or spoken a word. Just stood there, quietly, waiting. I stayed low, crouched under the window, heart pounding in my ears. I was trying to think, trying to figure out what to do. Should I call a neighbor? Try running out the front door and getting help? But the roads were probably flooded, and with the rain pouring like it was, I wouldn't get far without slipping or being seen. Then the lights flickered. For a second or two, the whole house went dim, and then, boom, everything went out. Complete darkness. I remember whispering out loud, "No, no, no," as I grabbed my flashlight from the kitchen drawer. I flicked it on, but it was weak. Batteries almost dead. The light barely reached across the room, but it was better than nothing. I stood up slowly and scanned the windows again. The figure by the fence was gone. I don't know if that made things better or worse. I moved from window to window, carefully pulling back the curtains just a little, looking out into the storm. Nothing. But that didn't mean he was gone. It just meant I couldn't see him. Then came the sound that nearly made me drop the flashlight. The back door handle, the one with the sliding glass, rattled. Not loud, not aggressive. Just testing. Someone was trying to see if it was unlocked. I wanted to yell, to bang on the wall, to scare him off, but my throat was dry. All I could do was back away slowly, step by step, until I was hiding in the hallway near the staircase. And then it went silent again. No more rattling, no more tapping, just the sound of rain hammering the roof and my breathing, shallow, fast, and panicked. I glanced at my phone again. A single bar of signal had flickered back on. Maybe the tower hadn't gone down completely, just a temporary drop during the worst of the storm. Hands shaking, I dialed my friend Mark. I waited by the stairs, trying not to move, still gripping the phone in my hand. I kept the lights off and just stood there in the dark, watching and listening. The house felt frozen, like it was holding its breath with me. The rain kept tapping against the windows and thunder rolled in the distance. I tried calling Mark again, and this time, thankfully, the call finally went through. I whispered into the phone, barely able to speak clearly. "Someone's inside," I said. "He's downstairs. I don't know who he is. Please just come." Mark didn't ask a lot of questions. He just told me to lock myself in a room and stay quiet. He said he'd be at my place in 10 minutes. I slowly backed into my parents' bedroom and locked the door behind me. I sat down on the floor beside the bed, holding my breath every time the floor creaked somewhere in the house. A few minutes later, I heard movement again. Quick footsteps going down the hallway, but away from me. Then silence. It was like whoever had been inside realized I wasn't alone anymore. Like maybe he heard my whisper through the phone. Maybe he knew someone was coming. Mark showed up with his dad just under 15 minutes later. We checked the whole house, top to bottom. Every door was still locked. No windows were broken. Nothing stolen. Nothing moved. Like he'd never been there. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. And I know I wasn't alone in that house. Whoever he was, he never came back. But I still double-checked the locks. Every single night,